everyone, I'm Saffitz. Welcome to my home kitchen. Today I have another preview of a recipe from What's for Dessert for creme brulee. But it's not just like your straightforward creme brulee, it is actually a choose your own ending dessert because you can either make creme caramel or creme brulee, and they're basically variations on the same dessert. One has a caramelly sauce that forms when you bake the custard and then invert it, and the other has a topping that's caramelized at the end. So I'm gonna show you actually how to make both. This is such a classic recipe. It's one of those things that's on like every dessert menu. It's kind of a cliche from the 90s, but it's cliched for a reason because it is perfect and delicious.
What do you love about creme brulees?
Ooh, I love custard. Custard it's just so good. But generally it's a mixture of eggs and dairy. It's thickened by the eggs and it can be made on the stovetop or it can be baked. And I just love it. And I love dairy. I love the kind of like yolkiness of a good custard. It's so silky and I love the texture of it. And creme brulee is just one of those things that it's like so many people's favorite desserts because it's that combination of texture and flavor. The recipe is the choose your own ending. So you can go this way and make creme caramel, this spectacular dessert, very similar to flan, where you invert it and there's this kind of like caramelly sauce that forms during baking that then becomes the top. Or you can make creme brulee. Or there's secret option C, half of one and half of the other. So that's what I'm gonna do today because I want to just be able to show you like the most amount of technique possible. Ingredients, very, very few ingredients. I have half and half, that is the dairy base. A mixture of yolks and whole eggs, 6 yolks and 2 whole eggs. This recipe makes 8 individual custards. You could always adapt the quantities and cut it in half if you wanna make fewer. Demerara sugar. Vanilla bean, granulated sugar, kosher salt. So you'll need 6-ounce ramekins or otherwise like oven safe baking vessel that's ceramic or glass. Other than that, you'll need a roasting pan or baking dish large enough to fit your ramekins. And other than that, just basic stuff, saucepan, a couple bowls, that's it. The first step if you're making creme caramel is to cook a caramel on the stove and pour it into your ramekins. So I'm gonna clear everything off and get started with that, but I'm only gonna do half the quantity because I'm only making 4 creme caramel and 4 creme brulee. The recipe starts with 3/4 cup of granulated sugar. Now that sugar either gets made into the creme caramel base or sprinkled on top of the creme brulee and then torched. So I'm gonna use half that amount of sugar, which is 6 tablespoons to make the caramel to make 4 creme caramel. So I have 6 tablespoons of sugar in my small saucepan. I'm gonna go over to the stove. I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of water and cook this into a lovely caramel. 2 tablespoons of water goes in. The first step in cooking a white caramel is to stir the sugar and water as it comes up to a boil because you want to dissolve the sugar. I'm just gonna stir with a flexible spatula until that happens. So the mixture's gone up to a boil, and as that temperature increased, the sugar dissolved. So now I have this clear syrup. That's what you're looking for. Once you have that, you're gonna stop stirring because stirring can encourage crystallization. And I'm gonna cook this and swirl the pot. And as I am swirling, I'm also gonna take my pastry brush and dip it in some water and use it to brush down the sides of the saucepan right at that like kind of line where the syrup is. And the point is to dissolve any sugar crystals because sugar crystals can encourage crystallization, then you get like a grainy mixture that will never really cook into a smooth caramel. And I want it to be a nice dark amber color. And so as it continues to cook, the bubbles will get larger and they'll take longer to pop. And then once it starts to take on a lot of color, the mixture will actually become like very fluid and not really bubble anymore because all the water has been cooked out. I'm gonna go in these 4 ramekins for the creme caramel because I want the surface area. This has a wider base than these. That bottom will become the top and I want all the caramel to fill in there. And now as a general rule of thumb, like the darker the caramel, the more of those bittersweet flavors you get, the more complexity. So I really like that and I don't want it to be too sweet. So here I have this fluid dark amber caramel. So I'm going to pour it into the bottom of my ramekins, dividing evenly. And again, if I were making all creme caramel, I would divide this among the 8 ramekins. So you can just eyeball it. You don't really want to have to measure caramel because it's like too hot. Go ahead and, working as quickly as you can, tilt the ramekins so that the caramel fills in the entire area of the bottom. And you want to work quickly because as soon as you transfer it into the ramekins, which are cool, it will start to harden. So just give it a little bit of a tilt. These look great. If you have little small areas where the caramel didn't quite fill in, that's okay. As the custards bake, the caramel just kind of like forms an even layer. But the idea is that we pour the custard over top, and as it bakes, the moisture from the custard liquefies the caramel on the bottom, and then you turn it out and it has this kind of caramel sauce. These are gonna cool, and now I'm gonna put together the custard, which is so simple, super, super easy, and only takes a few minutes. These are my custard ingredients right here. You can see it's like 5 ingredients, including salt. So it's so simple. I have my half and half, 4 cups. This is gonna go into my saucepan. And so we are following very classic custard making technique, which is blanching the eggs. And that step is where we beat the eggs and the sugar together until it's really kind of light and voluminous. And then we pour in the hot dairy. So the first step for making the custard is to let the dairy infuse with vanilla. I'm gonna add a very generous pinch of salt to the saucepan. Then I'm going to scrape my vanilla bean and add the seeds plus the empty pod to the saucepan. So I split the bean down one side. I don't cut all the way through. Then you unfold it like this, and I always place one finger to keep it open. Then use the blunt side of a paring knife and scrape down the length. These are really nice vanilla beans, like juicy, full of seeds. And I scrape several times to get everything out, right into the saucepan. And then for like all the vanilla flavor I can muster, I'm gonna add the pod as well. I wanna put this on the stovetop, and this is going to slowly come up to like a very, very gentle simmer. In fact, just under a simmer. I wanna see the mixture steaming and like little rippling below the surface. And by bringing it up slowly, I'm letting that vanilla flavor like really infuse into the dairy. And also, this is a good time to preheat your oven to 300 degrees and make sure you have a rack in the center. So now I'm going to turn my attention to the eggs. I have my yolks and my whole eggs, 6 yolks, 2 whole. And I'm in a medium bowl. I'm gonna add my demerara sugar. I have a half a cup. And I like the subtle complexity that you get from demerara sugar as opposed to granulated sugar. Granulated sugar works, I think, better as like the, torching sugar and for the caramel, but as far as the sweetener inside the custard, I really like demerara sugar. So now I'm gonna whisk this. This step is called blanching the eggs. And I wanna whisk this pretty vigorously until the mixture is pale and kind of foamy and frothy. So you can see now it's like really yellow and thin. This looks good. It's about like a minute of vigorous whisking, but still really easy to do by hand. Tempering is where we take the hot liquid component of your custard, whether it's like lemon juice or in most cases dairy, and we stream it into the eggs slowly to bring up the temperature of the eggs without scrambling them. So you know what I'm gonna do to make my life easier? I make a little skirt for the bowl so it doesn't move around because I need both hands for this. Okay, now just listen constantly. You want to slowly stream the half and half mixture into your eggs. One reason we heat the dairy is to help to infuse it with vanilla flavor. The other reason we want the custard base to be hot is because if we were to have done all of this at room temp and then bake it, it would take an extremely long time for it to bake. Starting with a hot custard before it goes into the oven decreases the bake time. So it's just speeds things along a little bit. Okay, so I have this custard. I want to strain it. I think this is an important step just because even if you don't like scramble your eggs, there's always like little bits of egg solids in there that you don't really want in your finished custard. I want the creme caramel and the creme brulee to be ultra smooth and silky and delicious so that we strain it. Now I'm going to just pour this through a strainer into another vessel. Once you add all of that dairy, go ahead and use a flexible spatula or a spoon to stir the custard scraping the bottom, and you just want to make sure that all of the demerara sugar is fully dissolved. You'll know if it's not dissolved because when you strain it, you'll have sugar in there, in which case you should submerge the strainer and stir inside just to make sure that sugar is dissolved. But right here in the strainer, all I have are like some big piece of vanilla solids and like little egg bits. So that's what I want. I'm gonna save my vanilla bean. And then still in the bowl, I have like some foamy parts with tons of vanilla bean still in it. And I want all of those vanilla seeds in the custard. So make sure you scrape that bowl out. You don't want to leave vanilla bean behind. So go ahead and press all that through the strainer. If you are using vanilla extract rather than bean, wait to add the vanilla until this stage. You don't really want to cook the vanilla because that can kind of diminish some of the flavor. So then go ahead and add your vanilla right now. Okay, so now I am ready to fill my ramekins. This is my custard base. We don't have to cook this anymore. It just gets cooked now in the oven. Different recipes for creme brulee and creme caramel will tell you different things about how to set up your water bath and how to bake the custards. I like to cover the custards as I bake them because I think it helps to promote even baking, and it also prevents the surface from forming like a skin and drying out. Oftentimes if like a recipe tells you to cover it, they'll tell you to fill your ramekins, put them in your baking dish, pour the water in, and then cover the whole thing. What I don't like about that is it's really hard to like check for doneness when the whole thing is covered, and also it makes you susceptible to the number one problem with water baths, which is that some of the water spills into your ramekins. We don't want that. So I take the extra step of covering each ramekin individually with a little bit of foil, one by one. So if you had a pour spout, it would make transferring the custard really easy. Now I'm gonna just agitate it a little bit because I want this to be evenly mixed. And now I'm going to divide the custard among my ramekins. It's about 2/3 of a cup per ramekin, which should go right to almost to the top of a 6-ounce ramekin. I'm kind of mindlessly doing this as I talk to you, but it's important so that I remember which ones are creme caramel and which ones are going to be creme brulee, because I don't want to torch one of the creme caramel. So I'm keeping them separate. With the remaining custard, I'm just going to top off all of the ramekins. With 6-ounce ramekins like I have, these will go almost right to the very top. I'm gonna take my pieces of foil labeled CC for creme caramel, and I'm going to, one at a time, cover the ramekins. And this doesn't have to be airtight. You're really just protecting the surface and preventing like lots of evaporation. So once you cover it, hold the foil taut. I have a skewer, you can use a paring knife. Go ahead and poke a couple of holes in the foil. And that is to allow steam to escape. And so that helps to prevent, as they cool, like lots of water collecting on the surface. Line the bottom of your roasting pan with a towel. This creates like a non-slip surface, so they don't go sliding around in the oven, and it's gonna have water covering it. So I'm gonna bring this over here. So I like to pull out the rack, transfer the non-filled baking dish to the oven, then pour in the water. I just think it feels safer and easier. Then take your water, and I'm gonna pour it into the baking dish. Halfway up is all you need. So that's at 300. They take between 30 and 35 minutes. It might take a little longer, it just depends. It depends on your ramekins, your oven itself, the temperature of your custard. So in about a half an hour, we'll take a look. So I'm going to use a pair of tongs to just lift up a corner of foil on one of the ramekins and give it like a little jostle. And I'm looking for a wobble, so there's fluidness in the center, but not a ripple where it still is very liquid. This is not done. It still is pretty liquid. See how it's more rippling than wobbling. So I'm just going to put that lid of foil back on top. You don't have to worry about getting it airtight or anything. And I'll check it again in 5 minutes. All right, it's definitely more of a wobble. You see how it's slower moving? And it really moves more like of a single piece than, sort of like ripples in a stream. Probably only needs like another 3 minutes, and then I'm gonna pull them out. We are 95% of the way done. I pulled the baking dish out of the oven, let them rest in the hot water bath just for 5 minutes, and then I pulled them out and put them on the rack If you are making creme brulee and you're going like this way in the choose your own ending custard path, you want to uncover them. So remove that foil. And that is for an important reason. I do not want like steam to sort of condense underneath the foil, even though I have the holes in it. I don't want to trap lots of moisture on the surface of the custard. I actually want the surface to dry out so that when I sprinkle it with sugar and go to caramelize it, it doesn't dissolve. It just instantly caramelizes under the torch. Now for the creme caramel, you can leave them covered because I don't want the surface to dry out. So I want that moisture in there because it's, you know, it's dissolving that caramel in the bottom. So for creme brulee, uncover. For creme caramel, keep covered. And now these are going to cool to room temp. I just don't want to like, you know, have these undergo major temperature changes because I don't want to shock the custard in any way. So just kind of let them gently cool and then pop into the fridge. So they need to be cold, especially creme brulee should be cold when you serve it because the heat of that torch can really kind of like melt the custard under the surface. A great thing to do ahead of time, set it up the day before. These can chill in the fridge for even a couple days. We're good. Okay, this is a very powerful torch. This is not my kitchen torch that I normally use, but it certainly works. This is a batch I made yesterday. I ended up cooking these in eight 8-ounce ramekins. So they're very cold. They've been chilling overnight. They are nice and set, but it's not rubbery. And you can see that they're ever so slightly like dipped in the middle because that setting and cooling is what happens. This is the 6 tablespoons of sugar that I have remaining from the batch where I made half creme caramel, half creme brulee. I have only 3 of 4 creme caramel here because I ate one. But I have the 4 creme brulee and I'm going to show you how to torch them. So start with a teaspoon measure and you're going to take a teaspoon and sprinkle it really evenly as possible over the surface of one of the custards. And I'm just working on top of this quarter sheet tray here because this is like a really powerful torch and I don't want to accidentally burn off, you know, like my countertop basically. If you are using shallower ramekins, you might need a little more sugar to get full coverage. So then I'm going to turn on my torch and I am going to sort of continuously move it around the surface, the sugared surface of the custard, just until it starts to caramelize. Why does it keep doing that, Harris?
What?
It keeps like shorting out. Oh God.
I've dealt with this.
There.
Oh God, oh God. I can't put that on my creme brulee.
It's not going on now.
Yeah, but that's not...
Reminds me when I was a kid and
We're not
you
like...
take like spray deodorant.
Harris, that's, no.
Don't try this at home, kids. They're getting hot. So...
Your hand, oh my God, your hand.
It's actually a good technique because you get like a...
Archie, this
faulty.
is chaos. Oh God. Can I just do it myself?
Sure.
Can you take the cat?
Take my kitty and go.
Thanks for your help. TS 4000.
Yeah. How is it, chef?
Oh, it's kind of expensive.
Delicious. Let's wrap.
Let's leave the board here and I'll torch them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. We'll be like, we gave up.
Yeah. There's too many things to explain about this. Let's finish this video, shall we? It is several hours later. It's dark outside. We've played a board game. Sweet Harris went out and found us a kitchen torch that I can invert. Poor guy finally came back several hours later. In fact, it took so long that the one that I baked this afternoon had time to fully chill. So I have 2, I just pulled a couple out of the fridge. I have a couple of creme caramel and 2 creme brulee. I'm gonna cover the surface with about a teaspoon of sugar. Again, depending on the dimensions of your ramekins, you might need a little bit more sugar to get full coverage. You can kind of tap it around. So this is just for the first layer of sugar. You can set this one off to the side. So you want to position the torch so that the very end of the blue flame is nearly touching the surface of the custard. And remember to keep the torch moving, because if you leave it in any one place for too long, not only will you burn the sugar, but you will kind of melt the custard underneath. Ooh, okay. And I like to go until it's pretty dark. You don't want to like blacken it because then it's burned and it's going to taste bitter. But you can take it until it's a nice deep amber. And now I'm going to go back and do the second layer. So this helps to build up caramel that's thick enough that you kind of shatter as you go to spoon into it. So like another teaspoon or so on top. Try to sprinkle it evenly. I finally have creme brulee, and then for the creme caramel to unmold it, you'll need some small serving plates. And then I'm going to take an offset spatula. You could use a butter knife, but it's better to have the flexibility of a little spatula like this, so you can press it against the side. And I'm going to run it around the custard, really maintaining contact with the ramekin. So I'm only, cutting between the custard and the ramekin and not into the custard itself. And then invert the plate onto the ramekin, turn it over, and there is this beautiful caramel sauce that comes out over your custard. It looks so good. You can see that there's only a little bit of caramel that's undissolved in the bottom of the ramekin. You can pour out any sauce that's in there. So here we have our creme brulee and our creme caramel. I'm going to taste each one. I'm going to start with the creme brulee because I want to crack into that sugar. That's like a very nice thick layer of sugar. See how pretty that looks, all crackled. It's not a complicated or difficult recipe. It's just a recipe that involves some technique where you have to be precise at a couple different stages. But if you break it down into steps, I think it's really manageable. So I'm going to taste it. And you can see that the texture of the custard is like really, it's so silky smooth, and it's set, but it's not rubbery. It's not overcooked. It's not curdled. I haven't made like sweet scrambled eggs. It is so silky smooth. I'm so excited to eat it. That one bite made me feel better about everything that happened so far today. I don't want to say it was worth it, because that was a lot, but it's so delicious. It's really not overly sweet. The caramel on top is crunchy, like bitter in a good way. The custard is very vanilla-y and really like rich from the half and half, but not too sweet at all. It's just so good. Now creme caramel. This one is cold, and of course I don't have the crunch from the caramel on top. Instead I have this really luxurious caramel sauce. I love the wobble. Like, it's just the perfect amount of set. For me, it's kind of a toss-up, which one I like better. I find both of them to be the kind of dessert I just cannot stop eating. I just like want more and more and more. So good. Really at its core, it's like a very simple custard, just a few ingredients. Just make sure you have the right torch and you won't run into any of my problems. So this has been a long day, but I'm really glad I could show you this recipe. This is another good example of the kinds of recipes I feature in What's for Dessert. It is sort of simple, yet it involves a little bit of technique. It is classic and incredibly delicious with big payoff at the end. So I'm glad we finally got to the end. I'm going to go enjoy this. We're going to play a little more Ticket to Ride. And thank you so much for watching. And don't forget to like and subscribe. If you want to pre-order the book, info's below. It's so good, you guys. Will you order pizza? Oh, thank you. Hey everyone, thank you for watching this episode. I just wanted to take a moment to tell you about some new stuff that I'm working on. So I'm going to be bringing you original video and recipe content every month, not just sweet stuff, but savory also, now that What's for Dessert is out in the world, kind of moving on to some new projects. So check out the link below to sign up. Thank you.